like one of the most famous wrestlers of all time, The Undertaker. He's
Oh my
finally
gosh.
he's finally retired, and now he's not playing because he was most famous for staying in the character at all times and not giving interviews, not doing signings that much. But now that he's retired, he's giving more interviews, and a lot of it we wish he would stop talking because he just says shit
Of
that's
course.
like fucking questionable and stupid,
Of
borderline.
course.
He doesn't go the racist, sexist route because he's like, yeah, WWE is a public traded company and they will shit can his ass if he does go there.
Wow.
But some of the shit that he's done said is like, oh, the wrestlers nowadays they don't go out and after the show to the bar or sit around in the
And
locker
do coke?
room and
They don't go out and do
probably
coke?
coke or whatever, play cards and drink excessively. Like now the wrestlers are fucking in the locker room playing video games and stuff, or like afterwards, like going to like comic book conventions and stuff like that. And even though he didn't say it, like a lot of some other old timers are like oh, these guys are not as buff enough and stuff like that. These guys are like they don't have the physique of wrestlers, and yeah, there's a lot of them that like today, like, and I'm not particularly talking about WWE because WWE has a specific look of what they want their professional wrestlers to look like, but the rest of the independents and other major corporations out, not just in the United States but across the world, the wrestlers look decidedly different. Like, you know who Hulk Hogan is. You don't have to say who that piece of shit is. And you've seen him in his prime, the way he looks.
I don't want you to be mad at the wrestlers 25 years later. Just mad.
Yes. Now I want you to take like I don't know if you're able to look up a picture. If you're able to look up a picture of what's a guy I can think CM Punk. You know who CM Punk is?
CM Punk? Of course I don't.
Okay.
CM
Punk. And look at his physique and how different his physique is than how Hulk Hogan is.
While his physique is muscular,
yeah,
it doesn't look like he has taken the drugged tears of a European baby cow to strengthen himself.
Yes.
His muscles look quite regular.
Yes, yeah. It also helps that
it looks like when he gets old. It looks like when he gets older, his skin won't be down to his ankles, but yet it still looks like the outline of muscle with no muscle. Mm-hmm. If anybody can take what that looks like. And if you can't take what it looks like, look at a picture of an older wrestler from the 90s. You'll see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it also helps that CM Punk is straight edge. He doesn't take any drugs whatsoever.
Look at that.
Yeah, and or smoke or drink at all. Well, I have. Never mind. I'm not going to tell that story because like CM Punk is from Chicago. He still lives in Chicago, and like
is he a bad guy? These are aggressive pictures.
Now he's what they call a face, a good guy.
Does he do MMA? He does MMA in addition to wrestle?
Well, he used to be briefly an MMA fighter.
Okay.
Like he started off as an independent wrestler, and WWE hired him. And excuse me. And he became quite popular. And this is during a time where WWE was which it still is, very corporate, very PG, very by the book, everything scripted, and it feels different from what the attitude era during the mid to late 90s and 2000s were, and he pretty much just blew the lid off of this whole cookie cutter PG thing, and them constantly hyping up and pushing. You've heard of John Cena?
Yes.
Yeah, John Cena. It was like there was a meme that always goes around when he was wrestling, like Cena wins, LOL. because he would always win, and he was cookie
yeah.
cutter and going out there and just being the corporate guy. And you had CM Punk come around, and he wasn't this corporate guy. He was an indie guy, which the WWE back then didn't. It even like back then and now kind of don't like the indie guy. They want guys from their system that they do. And CM Punk was an indie guy who got really big, and then we can go a little bit into it because it goes into the dark side of WWE. He became champion, and people started to like him, and he turned heel, and he came back, and pretty much he said it best when he left WWE. They were constantly running around, making him do things that he didn't want to do, promising him the main event of WrestleMania, and he never got it. He was always on the undercard. He got a kind of a like he described a cyst on his back, and he went to their doctor, and he did, the WWE's doctor said it was a fatty deposit. He was like, no, it's not a fatty deposit. He tried to squeeze it, it wouldn't pop, and he started feeling like crap. Constantly until finally his wife, who at the time worked for WWE, well, who was going to become his wife, his current wife now, was like, look, I'm going to send you to my doctor, and pretty much that what they said was a fatty deposit was a staph infection. And he had to cut it out. And like during that time, it was like, oh, it's a fatty deposit, will go away. They're constantly giving him like like something K-Pack or C-Pack type of steroid, and it was making him feel even worse. Like he famously said, like one show that he was wrestling, a SmackDown show, that he shit his pants. Because he was taking this drug, and they finally cut it out, and it was a staph infection, and the doctor was like if this had been any longer, you probably would have died.
That is so very unfortunate.
Yeah, and it just came up to this whole point that it was the day after the Royal Rumble, I think 2014. The Royal Rumble, their second largest, their second, third largest pay-per-view. Yeah. That the day afterwards, he told Vince, like, I'm tired, I'm going home. And pretty much he went home, and WWE said it was a sabbatical. And then like 6 months later, on his wedding day, he got a FedEx letter saying that he's terminated.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's dirty. It's a little dirty.
Yeah, that was really shitty. On his wedding day. On his fucking wedding day. And yeah, if you want to hear more of that, if people listening want to hear more of that, you can go back to he was on the Art of Wrestling podcast with Colt Cabana back in 2014. He describes a whole story. And he ended up staying away from wrestling for 7 years. Like he did mixed martial arts. He was in the UFC. He did some movies, wrote some comic books. He just recently came back to professional wrestling, not with the WWE, but their current competition, All Elite Wrestling, which is on Wednesday nights, their main show Dynamite on Wednesday nights on TBS, and their secondary show Rampage on Friday nights on TNT.
Okay.
And yeah, he came back in Chicago at the United Center. There was rumors that he was going to come back because they AEW shows originated in Chicago, even though they're based out of Jacksonville. They originated out of Chicago, but they like only did like the Now Arena, used to be the Sears Center in Hoffman Estates, or the Wintrust Arena in Chicago by McCormick Place. But they went and rented out the United Center. And it was this rumor that he was coming back, and Friday in June last year, he came back
Right.
And there was
Okay.
people crying in the street. I was yelling, I was cheering. I was like, "Oh man, he's back! He's back!" So, yeah, it's one of the fucked up, shady ass shit things that WWE's done. But yeah, I'm glad. Number one, I'm glad CM Punk is back and he's happy. Two, I'm glad there's competition for the WWE because a long time the WWE had no competition, hardly any competition whatsoever for a long period of time. It was like you're watching professional wrestling, either you're trying to catch it with tape trading or like someone send you a MPEG or a short video on YouTube with some independent company out there that's running like in small towns and stuff or like small shows. But on television, it was pretty much only WWE for the longest period of time because they eliminated their competition. We'll talk about it a little bit in this. So yeah,
the popularity of it went significantly down, and I remember that having something to do with the battle of all of these associations.
Yeah,
right. You had the WWF, then you had what is it, AM.
No, it was World Championship Wrestling, WCW.
WCW, right?
Yeah,
WWF, WCW, and there were a few more. I mean, as a person who lived in Illinois and had
yeah.
public channels, as are you, there was there were local things that got televised for half a minute until horrible things happened, and then you couldn't see them anymore. But there were when the
Yeah.
competition with these different leagues came in,
Mm-hmm.
you did start to see a drop, and that I think that has something to do with the things that these leagues felt they had to do to
Yeah.
stay competitive, which ended up being extremely violent, extreme amount of violence.
Yeah, I think mostly you're talking about Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW.
That was one of them.
Yeah, that
It
was
wasn't the
one of
only
them.
one, but that was one of them.
Yeah, that was one of them. And what Lorrell is talking about, if you're not familiar with professional wrestling, there was a time during the mid to late 90s to the early 2000s. It was a time which WWF at the time and WCW World Championship Wrestling, which was owned by Ted Turner and eventually was owned by Time Warner, when Turner Broadcasting and Turner Media merged with Time Warner merged together, it was called the Monday Night Wars. And you had you had WWE, their main show was it still is, well, not their main show, but their show Raw, Monday Night Raw, which came on Monday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And it was competing head to head with WCW's main show, Monday Nitro.
Nitro.
And during that time, like this was like really the peak of professional wrestling, where those two shows, if you're not old enough to remember, those two shows were interchangeably number one and number two in all of cable television.
Boy, oh boy.
All of cable television, and this is a cable television that is different. Well, cable pay TV, more than less pay TV. This is a pay TV that is radically different to how it is today. On pay television, you didn't have that many NFL games. You had the NBA games, but most of the major games, outside of like your regional games, like in Chicago, it was Sports Channel. They showed the Bulls. Well, now it's NBC Sports, Comcast Sportsnet or NBC Sportsnet, whatever it's called now. Your regional team, the Bulls, the national games, which now in the NBA, which will be on a TNT or a ESPN. Your major national games were on NBC. Well, on regular free television. Most of your NFL games like today was on free television. Monday Night Football was not on ESPN. It was on ABC. There was a Sunday night game, but that was on ESPN. Unless you lived in that regional, and then it was on whatever television channel. NHL still where it is now today. Baseball, Regionally, they were on whatever channel that you had. There wasn't that many. Wasn't that many script